Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that break. When we left, you asked whether I would be brief. The break allowed me to add a touch more. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleagues who spoke in support, the members for Panton East and West for their moving remarks, the member for West Bay Central for her touching comments, of course the member for Savannah, who is also the Parliamentary Secretary for Social Development, whose remarks touched me greatly, as well as the Deputy Governor. I'd also like to thank His Excellency the Governor, who looked at me in Cabinet when we were approving the bill and its publication and said, "Minister, this is important." And I'd like to thank him for his recognition. Ordinarily, Mr. Speaker, we would hear from the opposition and their contributions. Unfortunately, they've decided not to be here. Mr. Speaker, the only public evidence we have is of their general position towards the bill are the remarks they made in their press conference last Friday, the 7th of October. I took from the press conference, Mr. Speaker, that the opposition had no material objection to the bill. Mr. Speaker, I, at this point, thought that that was good and honest recognition. But the opposition went on to make further remarks in this press conference to claim that the bill was just a framework with very little, and they had not seen the accompanying regulations, and that the bill is not much more than a good PR exercise. Now, Mr. Speaker, I need the House and the listening public to understand that had they said nothing, I'd have thought nothing. But I cannot let those remarks go unanswered for two chief reasons. First, I didn't produce this bill by myself. In fact, if I had, as I would as a private sector attorney beavering away my desk on my own, I might have actually taken the remarks as a compliment. Because the art in a law firm, and both law firms I worked in, is to try to produce a document that has intricate provisions and make it look and read simply. Besides, Mr. Speaker, I know coming into this role is to expect off-color remarks, and I'm prepared to just, from me personally, brush them off. However, I simply cannot allow the painstaking work and solid contributions of so many civil servants, of the private sector members, and my colleagues who read and support this to be besmirched in that manner. Second, Mr. Speaker, in relation to the remark about not having the accompanying regulations, it did not convey a complete picture to the listening public in my view. Now, Mr. Speaker, there are a number of tempting ways to respond to those comments. But I refuse to depart from my behavioral standards because others decide to do so. In the words of Michelle Obama, When they go low, you go high. Mr. Speaker, instead, I will address the opposition's remarks in this way. As I turn to thank all who contributed and summarize as briefly as possible from the start of this work, I'll let the listening public decide that after hearing this account, whether this effort was not much more than a good PR exercise. From the top, Mr. Speaker, I'll thank the chief officer, the then chief officer for community affairs, Teresa Echeniki. In 2018, when I joined the Ministry of then Community Affairs, she saw the vision and the internal need to deliver on behalf of the then government a response to the OEG report and authorized me as the then deputy chief officer to commence research and analysis. My right-hand policy partner in the Community Affairs Ministry was Miss Sophie Banner, an extremely bright, articulate Caymanian who helped in terms of our research. We reviewed the Commonwealth, particularly we reviewed OTs to look for modern financial assistance legislation so we wouldn't have to totally reinvent the wheel. Once we had completed that analysis, we settled on the fact of similar economics, similar population size, similar system of legal drafting, and also similar setup of social services on Bermuda, and looked at their legislation and thought this is something that is more easily adaptable for the Cayman Islands. At that point, we then turned to the deputy governor. At this point, we were just hoping he could arrange a call for us to talk to our counterparts in social services in Bermuda. I'll let him stand up for a point of order if what I'm about to say is untrue, but he said no. He looked at us and said, this is important. What you need to do is actually go to Bermuda. This is what official travel is meant for. I don't think he calls deputy governors and other overseas territories just for giggles. He then picked up the phone, called his counterpart DG in Bermuda, and arranged for us to meet with, they call in Bermuda chief officers still, permanent secretaries, and allowed us to have a site visit in Bermuda, which was myself, Sophie Banner, and Tamara Hurlston as a NEU director. We then spent time with the Bermuda Financial Assistance Department, their ministry staff, as well as their Department of Children and Family Services. And I'm here to tell you, and I'm sure that Sophie and Tamara will verify, was some of the most engaging discussions I have ever had on social development. It was an enormous example of the collaboration between OTs. So I'd like to thank the Deputy Governor for seeing the importance of it and picking up the phone and arranging that. I think the permanent secretary in Bermuda, I understand, is now retired, but I'll never forget him. His name was Wayne Carey, and he was an extraordinary public servant. And I'd like to thank him and his Bermudan colleagues for assisting Cayman in this way. Now, bill development paused, I understand, around late 2019 and into 2020. I wasn't there. I had already moved on to the post of representative for the country to London, but I would venture to say that probably COVID would have played a role. But as the good Lord would have it, I re-entered the picture as the Minister for Social Development in 2021 and was able to then help the new ministry pick up the baton and really drive things forward. The new ministry then started off with extensive consultation. 8 focus groups were formed that consisted of other government departments, nonprofit organizations, current and previous clients of NEU, landlords who accept rent for NEU, and to really put a point on that, we ensured that we didn't just sort of cherry pick from the client list the ones that the deputy governor referred to who are getting strong service. We said, let's bring in the ones who claim that they aren't being served. Because either you hear from them now or you hear from them when we go out to put the bill over the radio. So we might as well bring them into the tent earlier. And we heard them, and they made insightful observations, things that we took on board. Most of the focus groups lasted from 1 to 2 hours. Some of them were scheduled for an additional hour because discussions got so intense and had an additional date. We thought we were done round about March 2022, earlier this year. But then myself, a few other ministers attended the Alex Panton Foundation Symposium. And there were such moving speeches from mental health practitioners and also the youth ambassadors that it dawned on me right there and then in the symposium, we as our focus groups haven't included mental health practitioners. We haven't included the youth. So as much and as fast as we wanted to move, we took a pause and established a focus group solely for them. And I can't believe that the Lord would have it, just as happens to be International Mental Health Day. And it was important to take that step because as we know, mental health is not something that you can see and touch, it's not tangible, which is probably why we left it out of the first focus group. And the points they made at that symposium and how powerful, particularly our young Caymanians spoke, left a clear impression that we had to take, it was worth to take the time to create an additional focus group. Mr. Speaker, we also, as part of that focus group, I'd like to thank the professional facilitator that helped to organize and run most of the focus group, a professional firm by the name of Story Studio. Following that, we then had numerous iterations of the draft of the bill internally, and then prepared a full presentation to the political caucus, which was very detailed, and I must thank all of my caucus colleagues for their helpful additions, their insightful comments that further improved the bill. A similar discussion occurred in cabinet and then allowed us to feel comfortable enough that we had a solid draft for approval and publication. But it didn't stop there, Mr. Speaker. Following publication of the bill on the 12th of August 2022, consultation continued, including with the Office of the Ombudsman, who also made helpful observations regarding data protection rules, which then suggested that it was worth it to now bring, which we will come to later this evening, to some helpful committee stage amendments to be sure we're on the right line of data protection. We then also had 2 media roundtables in which all of the main media outlets were invited and got a presentation, not just on the bill, our whole approach to revamp the needs assessment unit, and the likely provisions that would be included in accompanying regulations. So, Mr. Speaker, it didn't surprise me at the opposition's press conference why those reporters asked about whether or not they would attend this meeting for this bill, because they understood from that consultation how important it was. I personally, they can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not friends with any of those reporters, I don't have dinner with them, but just listening to how they asked the question, I think I could hear the surprise in their voice. You're not going to attend? And the reason they knew that is because they attended the presentation and took part in the consultation and understood, to the point that the Deputy Premier made earlier, of how this improves a wholly outdated law from 1964. Mr. Speaker, to top it off, We offered the opposition the same presentation. The same presentation the political caucus had. The same presentation the Office of the Ombudsman had. The same presentation over 2 media roundtables. And to receive their view on the bill, on the likely provisions of upcoming accompanying regulations. Firstly, on the 9th of September of this year. Secondly, on the 12th of September of this year. And lastly, on the 15th of September of this year, none of which were attended. I'll repeat again for my colleagues in case they were on their phones. We offered the opposition the exact same presentation that was given to the political caucus, given to the Office of the Ombudsman, given to the focus groups, and given to 2 media roundtables. Firstly, on the 9th of September, the 12th of September, and the 15th of September, and none were attended. This year. So, Mr. Speaker, and those were done in the spirit and offered of true transparency, because we recognize this bill is to help all of our people, which includes them. So it was in a spirit of to be inclusive and to take them up on their offer of all this experience that they want to offer to us, which now rings hollow because they never came. Mr. Speaker, if members of the opposition with longer years of experience as parliamentarians than me, some over 2 decades, who would know how difficult it is to bring legislation to the floor on a good day even an amendment, to bring forward legislation that leapfrog 50 years with all the provisions that I outlined in my contribution, would not be able to resist whatever temptation that they were grumpy about at a press conference, to recognize the gargantuan effort that would have happened with me. I am here to tell the listening public that Minister, for 16 months, will say thank you to the staff and the private sector and my colleagues for their contribution. In particular, the ministry team has been stellar. Acting Chief Officer Tamara Ebanks could not be here. She's isolating with COVID. I hope I wasn't the one that gave it to her, but I'm sure she's listening. The Acting Deputy Chief Officer, Will Roberts, has been an inspiration. Thank you. The entire ministry, social development, as we call it, POD, Deborah Webb Sibley's, Ashlyn Gobo Ebanks, and a special mention to Mahir Petkovsky. Her passion and her intellect really drove things forward. And our comms officer, who's always passionate, always chasing us to get the message out. You might do all this work, but if nobody knows about it, then it doesn't amount to much. Ms. Kendra Okonski. NEU management has been behind the development of the legislation because they know what needs to be done in terms of what happens in practice. We in a policy world might have ideal provisions in our head, and they will look at us and say, well, that's not going to work, and then help improve the bill. Led by Tamara Hurlston, Melissa, who is also, this is why I think it might have been me, also isolating with COVID. So we had a ministry retreat, and I was wondering if I still had some remnants, but anyway, she would have been there if she could, because she recognized and was on that journey in Bermuda all those years ago to get to this step. But her assistant director, Melissa Smith, is here, and Justin Ebanks, who's also an assistant director, is here, and I thank them, and I thank all of the staff. I'd like to thank Ms. Darlene Smith from Legal Drafting, who has a very quiet, stern way about her, has a way to get her point across without making you feel a way, but then you go away thinking, she got me. And we're going to have to maybe change this. And I know that she was also ably supported by Michelle Neville, who told me a very long time ago as a civil servant, Minister, this is just something we got to get done. So I know that Michelle was in the background. I'd like to thank my colleagues for their tacit support. And before I go, regarding the charge of not seeing accompanying regulations, that has to be covered. Because so much of what gives the authority, the functions, as the Deputy Governor said, the attachment of being able to find those who are able, some form of work to be productive, the appeals tribunal, and before you even get to the appeals tribunal, the powers that the director has and the department, offenses, penalties, confidentiality. What's really just missing from the regulations is just the one set of regulations to deal with the process of the appeal, the procedure of the appeals tribunal, and another set to just the basic application functions and new features that we're trying to incorporate of how we assess our people. I think at this point in our preliminary rough draft, both don't really amount so far to much more than, say, 15 or 16 provisions, which is not unusual for substantive legislation. And even though the opposition had missed those opportunities, I will not let it deter from my character. And if the bill is passed tonight, I will still give them an opportunity to review the accompanying regulations before a cabinet approves them for publication. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I turn to share a personal account that I probably wouldn't have done so if the Deputy Premier didn't make the remarks he did. He mentioned that my comments moved him to speak. His comments have moved me to add this in conclusion. In 2018, when I was a senior policy advisor for financial services, and I had seen the post of Deputy Chief Officer for Community Affairs, some reason it spoke to me. My original love and my first degree was sociology. I had spent significant time of almost 5 years in financial services, and I thought it was time for a change. Now, I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, each and every one of us have a small group of confidants, a small council of advisors that you go to for your deepest personal decisions and ask them what they think. I have about 5. And on this occasion, all said, don't take that job. It will probably be thankless. You're in a quote-unquote sexy ministry. You deal with high-end large firms. You get to travel. The legislation doesn't really get as tough scrutiny because it's not something that really impacts the grassroots directly. Why would you go? Why don't you just stay and continue bucking for chief officer in financial services? The only one of my small council was my mother. And she said, son, follow your heart. Remember, your middle name is Martin. And for a while you were growing up, when you were smaller, you thought it was because I admired Dr. Martin Luther King why I gave you Martin. But remember, as you came of age, that I reminded you that Martin is your patron saint, Martin de Porres, the Peruvian friar, who's the Catholic patron saint for social justice, poverty, and racial harmony. And I've been waiting for a moment in your life that you could carry that kind of work through. So you go and ignore everybody else and follow your heart. And then, not too much longer later, when I was offered the post in London, I struggled with it because I knew that the work of then community affairs wasn't done. So I called my mother again. Said, I'm sort of being talked into this job. I don't even know if it was really for me or if I want it. And I also feel like I'm leaving a ministry behind because there's so much work to do. And she said, son, it's probably given to you by the Lord so that you get an opportunity to view Cayman from the outside looking in and be able to find out around the world what they do in social justice and apply that to home one day. I don't know when that one day will be, but it'll be one day. That, coupled with the staff in the London office who made similar comments, not knowing what my mother said that this role in London is one of those that takes on the identity of the holder. And if you believe in those social issues, there's got to be things that England does better than Cayman that you can learn from, so come do the job. And so said, so done. But I could never have imagined at that point in time in 2019 that I would ever have arrived right now to be the Minister for Social Development. And I share that with you, Mr. Speaker, and the listening public to say that for whatever reason, as the Lord would have it, we are all right where we are supposed to be. And I believe that this team, even as the member for Panton East said last week, that there's things that we can work on to do better. Yes, there are things that we will do better as we bond this team of independent thinkers. But I am not persuaded that we haven't been divinely placed to think first of the people of this country and to strengthen the grassroots based on the demeanor of the opposition at that press conference that so coldly dismiss legislation of this kind as not much more than a good PR exercise is indicative of that line of thinking that we are not a part of. So for now, Mr. Speaker, and for the foreseeable future, I'd like to thank all of my colleagues for their support in this matter. There is more to do, and if we hold to that principle of why we started this in the first place, for the strengthening, for social justice, for social equity, for accountability, for competence and transparency, I thank them for that, and the mission couldn't be clearer. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question is that a bill shortly entitled the Financial Assistance Bill 2022 be given a second reading. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The Financial Assistance Bill 2022 has been given a second reading. Continue.
Accountants Amendment Bill 2022.
The Honorable Minister for Commerce.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the second reading of a bill entitled the Accountants Amendment Bill 2022.
The bill has been duly moved. Honorable Minister wishing to speak thereto?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the government to present the bill to amend the Accountants Act 2020 revision which I shall refer to hereon as the Principal Act, to update legislative references, to enhance the administration of the Act and of the Principal Act, and for incidental and connected purposes. Mr. Speaker, in line with this government's strategic broad outcome of improving our financial services as an industry, a product and economic driver of our islands, the bill aims to maintain our best-in-class reputation. Since the Accountants Act came into force in 2016, there have been no material amendments. There is consequently a need, Mr. Speaker, to update legislative references and to make certain enhancements. Make the legislation more practical to administer for the Cayman Islands Institute of Professional Accountants, which I'll refer to hereon as SEPA, and to introduce commercial enhancements that benefit the jurisdiction. SEPA has the responsibility in the Cayman Islands for licensing public accountants, registering accountants and accounting firms, and monitoring the adherence to continuing professional development requirements for its members. SEPA's responsibilities, as well as their own goals, prompted their submission of proposals to the Ministry of Financial Services. Mr. Speaker, these proposals were then subject to an extensive legislative process by the ministry, including consultation and engagement with relevant stakeholders whose valued input was considered during the drafting of this bill. Mr. Speaker, I will now summarize the key amendments in the bill. Limited liability partnerships can now be used to structure professional businesses, including accounting firms. Accordingly, the bill takes this step into account and includes limited liability partnerships in the definition of firm of public accountants. Mr. Speaker, the bill broadens SEPA's scope to issue public accountant licenses with conditions. Currently, the Act only allows conditions to be attached when issuing a limited duration or temporary license for a person on a temporary work permit. However, it is recognized that there are other circumstances where it's necessary and desirable for SEPA to be able to issue a license with conditions. For example, when a new practitioner has experience that would be sufficient for simple engagements, but not for complex entity engagements. Mr. Speaker, the bill provides SEPA with the ability to impose appropriate conditions on licenses. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, the bill enables a relevant sole practitioner or relevant firm to surrender their registration and for SEPA to cancel their registration under appropriate circumstances. Mr. Speaker, the bill is arranged in 9 clauses. Clause 1 provides a short title and the commencement of the legislation. Clause 2 amends Section 2 of the Principal Act to change the definition of the term firm of public accountants and to insert definitions of the terms Cayman Islands Business Law Course and retired member. Clause 3 amends Section 8 of the Principal Act to extend the qualifications for registration as a member and update legislative references. Clause 4 inserts in the Principal Act a new Section 8A, which provides the qualifications and procedure for the registration of retired members. Clause 5 amends Section 10 of the Principal Act by repealing and substituting subsection 3 to provide for additional persons to make an application for registration as a student. Clause 6 amends Section 11 of the Principal Act by inserting a new subsection 3, which provides that a license issued by the Council of SEPA for a Caymanian or permanent resident to engage in public practice from or within the Cayman Islands may be subject to such conditions as the Council determines appropriate. Clause 9 amends Section 12 of the Principal Act by inserting a new subsection 2A, which provides that a license issued by the council for a work permit holder to engage in public practice from or within the islands may be subject to such conditions as SEPA's council determines appropriate. Clause 8 amends Section 13 of the Principal Act to increase the fine for an offense committed under that section. Clause 9 amends Section 38 of the Principal Act by inserting a new subsection 5A, which enables a relevant sole practitioner or a relevant firm to apply to the council to surrender its registration as a sole practitioner or firm, which is subject to the institutes as defined in the Principal Act system of oversight, quality assurance, investigation, and penalties. The council may then approve the surrender or cancel the registration. In winding up, Mr. Speaker, this concludes my presentation of the proposed bill. I want to convey sincere and special thanks to the member for West Bay Central, because although I am the official member in charge of the bill, the preparations done to date, to this point, were managed by the member for West Bay Central in her capacity as the Parliamentary Secretary for Financial Services. From April of this year, when Cabinet approved drafting instructions, I delegated day-to-day supervision of the bill-making process to the Parliamentary Secretary to gain ministerial experience in relation to the legislative making process. I then returned to conduct an overall review before taking the bill to Cabinet for approval and publication. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, the bill is mainly a product of her supervision and an example of teamwork, providing opportunities within our own team for growth and professional development. Thank you, Madam. With that, Mr. Speaker, I commend the Accountant's Amendment Bill 2022 to this Honorable House for its second reading.
Question is that a bill shortly entitled this time of night. Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? The Parliamentary Secretary, the member for West Bay Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to rise briefly to also support this bill and to publicly thank the Minister for entrusting me to take care of this matter. Also, just to thank the SEPA board, their chair, CEO, Ms. Cherie Ebanks, and also our ministry staff, and all of the other individuals that had their hand in ensuring that this bill made it today to the floor. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does the minister wish to use his right of reply?
Only briefly, Mr. Speaker, to thank members for their tacit support.
Question is that a bill shortly entitled the Accountant's Amendment Bill 2022 be given a second reading. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, the ayes have it. The Accountant's Amendment Bill 2022 has been given a second reading.
Limited Liability Companies Amendment Bill 2022.
Minister of Financial Services, Commerce.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the second reading of a bill entitled Limited Liability Companies Amendment Bill 2022.
The bill has been duly moved. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to present the bill on behalf of the government, a bill that seeks to amend the Limited Liabilities Company Act 2021 revision, which I shall refer to hereon as the principal act, to ensure only the names of initial members of a limited liability company are recorded in the registration statement. The bill also seeks to require a limited liability company to keep a record of the interest held by and the voting rights of each member of a limited liability company. Finally, the bill seeks to remove the duplicate penalty for failure to comply with a request of the competent authority for additional information and for incidental and connected purposes. Mr. Speaker, the main purpose of the bill is to comply with the Financial Action Task Force, or FATF for short, standards. The FATF is the international body responsible for the development of global standards for anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing. The FATF publishes these standards in a set of recommendations, and the Cayman Islands, as a member of the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, is committed to their implementation. Mr. Speaker, the First Amendment in the bill relates to the FATF Recommendation 24, which requires that a company maintain a register of its shareholders or members containing the names of the shareholders and members and number of shares held by each shareholder and categories of shares, including the nature of the associated voting rights. Mr. Speaker, the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, or CFATF for short, conducted a mutual evaluation of the Cayman Islands' technical implementation of this requirement in 2019 and found that there was no requirement for companies to maintain information in respect of the nature of associated voting rights. This deficiency was addressed for entities incorporated under the Companies Act by the Companies Amendment Act 2019. However, the change did not apply to limited liability companies. The bill seeks to correct this issue by amending Section 61 of the Principal Act to require information relating to members of a limited liability company to be recorded in the register, including the nature of associated voting rights. Mr. Speaker, the next change seeks to correct an issue which was identified during a review of the Principal Act by the Ministry in response to observations made by respected senior practitioners. Section 5.2 of the Principal Act requires the names and addresses of the members of a limited liability company are to be recorded in its registration statement. And Section 8.1 of the Principal Act requires this information to be updated when there's a change. Further, Section 5.2a of the Principal Act instructs the General Registry to make the information contained in the registration statement public. This has the effect of requiring that the names of any members of a limited liability company are made public. Mr. Speaker, at present, the FATF standards do not require information to be made available public. Therefore, as that is not a requirement to date, we seek to bring the limited liability companies in line with the companies. Mr. Speaker, the final provision to the Principal Act pertains to subsection 90A3, which outlines the penalties for the default in complying with failure to provide beneficial ownership information on receipt of a notice for a competent authority. The Attorney General's Chambers advised that this provision should be deleted, as penalties are sufficiently covered in the beneficial ownership administrative fines regime, which commenced in October 2020. The administrative fines regime provides the registrar with the power to issue a fine of $5,000 to a person that breaches their obligations relating to beneficial ownership, including Section 90A of the Principal Act. Importantly, Mr. Speaker, the bill was developed in consultation with the Ministry and relevant implementing agencies, including, of course, the General Registry. Industry stakeholders were consulted in December of 2020 with respect to the addition of the nature of associated voting rights in the register of members. Valuable feedback was received and changes were made to the bill at that time to better reflect the peculiarities of a limited liability companies. A revised bill was sent for industry consultation in April of this year, and no further comments were received. Accordingly, Mr. Speaker, the bill is arranged in 4 clauses. Clause 1 provides a short title of the legislation. Clause 2 amends Section 5 of the Principal Act to provide the names and addresses of the initial members of the limited liability company to be included in the registration statement. Clause 3 amends Section 61 of the Principal Act by repealing subsection 1 and substituting a new subsection 1 to require a limited liability company to maintain in the register kept at its registered office or any other place within or outside the Cayman Islands information on the interests held by each member of the limited liability company. Clause 3 amends Section 61(2) of the Principal Act to require a limited liability company to maintain the information contained in the register of members under Section 61(1) at its registered office, where the register of members is kept at a place other than its registered office. Clause 4 amends Section 90A of the Principal Act by repealing subsection 3, which prescribes the penalty for a limited liability company or corporate services provider which fails to comply with a request for additional information by the competent authority. Mr. Speaker, that concludes my presentation of the bill. In closing, I want to thank, as ever, all of the ministry staff, the legislative drafting department for their efforts with respect to the design and preparation of the bill, and importantly, industry stakeholders for their astute observations and suggestions to improve the bill. I therefore commend the Limited Liabilities Company Amendment Bill 2022 to this Honorable House for its second reading.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? If not, the Honorable Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Not much to say, just to go on the record as providing support to the Honorable Minister and the Ministry for taking these steps to, as he said, bring the legislation in line with the contemplation of the FATF standards. Mr. Speaker, as you're well aware, and honorable member of this House are well aware, this is a rolling effort, so to speak, with these ever-evolving standards. And I certainly want to thank the Minister and the Ministry for their vigilance and their willingness to do what is necessary to ensure that our legislation, Mr. Speaker, are ever compliant with these 40 recommendations of the FATF. It's an excellent example of working with partnerships with the Ministry, the chambers, anti-money laundering units, and other stakeholders, including, as you mentioned, members of the private sector who are quite aware of the importance of ensuring that our legislation are compliant, as it speaks well for our international reputation as a financial services center. So the amendments or the tweaking of the legislation, Mr. Speaker, is quite important, quite timely, and I understandably want to unequivocally give my support to the amendments. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? If not, does the Honorable Minister wish to reply?
Very briefly, Mr. Speaker, thank you. To thank the Honorable Attorney General for his vocal support and to my colleagues for their tacit support.
Question is that a bill shortly entitled Limited Liability Companies Amendment Bill 2022 be given a second reading. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, the ayes have it. The Limited Liability Companies Amendment Bill 2022 has been given a second reading.
Education Amendment Bill 2022.
The Honorable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move the bill for an act to amend the Education Act 2016 to require all the schools to formulate an anti-bullying policy and for incidental and connected purposes.
Has been duly moved. Is the Honourable Minister speaking thereto?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the interest of time, I will be speaking briefly, and I will also be giving way to my esteemed Parliamentary Secretary for Education, who's been the mover and pusher for this piece of legislation to come before this Honourable House today to flesh out the details. Mr. Speaker, the Education Amendment Bill 2022 amends the Education Act 2016, referred to as the Principal Act, to require that all schools formulate an anti-bullying policy. Clause 1 provides for the short title and commencement of the legislation. Clause 2 amends the definition of disciplinary penalties in Section 2 of the Principal Act to include penalties imposed on a student by a school for contravention by that student of the school's anti-bullying policy. Clause 3, Mr. Speaker, inserts a new Section 27A into the Principal Act to require every school to have a written anti-bullying policy based on the national policy and on other prescribed requirements. The anti-bullying policy, Mr. Speaker, must be approved by the Ministry of Education. Clause 3 also gives the Cabinet the power to make regulations prescribing as follows: A, the contents of the anti-bullying policy; B, the reporting and notification requirements in relation to the said bullying; C, the investigation procedures in relation to the bulletin, I beg your pardon; D, the form of the disciplinary penalties to be imposed for breaches of an anti-bullying policy; E, the procedure for the enforcement of the disciplinary penalties; F, all matters that may be necessary for giving effect to the disciplinary mechanisms; and finally, G, the submission of reports on bullying. Mr. Speaker, it's a very small bill as far as the drafting is concerned, but we believe it's going to make a colossal impact when implemented, and the associated regulations are put in place for those in the school. And just to say before I would ask members to give their undivided attention to my Parliamentary Secretary's contribution, the member from West Bay Central, that bullying is not restricted just to the schools. It is a tri-party investment, and that all in sundry should play their part in the elimination thereof. I thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Education, the member for West Bay Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand tonight to support the Education Amendment Bill 2022, which was just tabled by the Honourable Minister of Education. Mr. Speaker, as the Minister just mentioned, this bill seeks to amend the Education Act 2016 to require all schools to have a written anti-bullying policy based on national policy, which must be approved by the Ministry of Education. Speaking of anti-bullying, I also have the joy of sharing something similar today. I know the Minister of Health was excited to be tabling her bill on the Mental Health Day, and October is also National Bullying Prevention Month. So it's also fitting for me this evening to be able to stand here tonight to speak on this piece of legislation. Mr. Speaker, as the Minister of Education just said, this bill also provides for Cabinet to make regulations to prescribe the required contents of the anti-bullying policy, the reporting and notification requirements on any bullying behavior, and the investigation procedures in relation to any incidents of bullying. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the regulations will set out the procedures for the enforcement of the disciplinary penalties and all matters for giving effect to the disciplinary mechanisms. It also provides for the submission of reports on incidents of bullying in the schools. Mr. Speaker, this piece of legislation, as all of my colleagues know, is very important to me, and I would like to speak briefly on how having this legislation can reduce bullying behavior in our schools. Albeit, as the minister just mentioned, we have bullying behavior not just in our schools, but in the workplace and many other areas. But I think that this is, yes, definitely cyberbullying as well. But I think this is a great start for us here as the government. And this legislation also provides a holistic approach to addressing the cause of bullying behavior by allowing various agencies such as counselors and Department of Children and Family Services to be involved with all parties of the incidents of bullying. This would be the parents, the student with the bullying behavior, and the student that has been affected by this behavior. Mr. Speaker, this will hopefully aid in the removal of the bullying behavior by identifying any matter that might cause a student to act out. By addressing these problems from early, the various agencies are able to offer this support to the students and hopefully reduce the chance of our students going through the system with unidentified emotional delinquencies. Mr. Speaker, many of the young people who have taken their lives have done so because they were bullied, and they felt that the only way to ease the pain was to take their own lives. Also, Mr. Speaker, if we look at some of the individuals who have been imprisoned, many will tell you that they too bullied someone at some point in their childhood. And those who have been incarcerated were also once a child that was acting out because they were facing some sort of situation that they needed some help to address. So, Mr. Speaker, in relation to this very important bill, and as the minister said, it may seem small, but as the Jamaicans say, it talawa. I would like to thank the Minister of Education for allowing me the opportunity to work along with her and the ministry staff to contribute to this amendment. I would also like to acknowledge the former director of the Law Reform Commission, Ms. Cheryl Neblett, and the current director of the Law Reform Commission, Mr. Jose Griffith, and former senior legislative counsel, Ms. Karen Stevenson Dalton, and each of the law commissioners who have spent lots of time reviewing the amendment law and the draft regulations, along with various stakeholder feedback. And Mr. Speaker, I just want to touch briefly on the Law Reform Commission. I gained an appreciation of this agency within government after spending some time there as a member of staff. And I don't think that we as parliamentarians appreciate enough of the type of work that they do. And if we look at the work that they have spent extensive periods of time on, some of which hasn't gotten any further than a final report, states and shows how, if we look at some of the reports that they have drafted many, many years ago, they're still very relative today. So I just want to acknowledge them and all their hard work tonight. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I would also like to thank the people that continue to exercise what I refer to as people power right here in our country. In this instance, I want to acknowledge Ms. Janet Young, her husband, Mr. Sam Young, Ms. Sabrina Tyndale, Ms. Rachel Morris, and Mr. Mark Green, all founding members of United Against Bullying Foundation, who give of their time to fight continually to raise an awareness on the need for anti-bullying legislation and who dedicate much of their time to visit our schools to sensitize our young people on the effects that bullying behavior has on students and their families. Going back to what we said earlier, it would be nice if we could have some individuals visiting some of the workplaces and sensitizing some of our adults on what bullying does within the workforce, but we'll get there. With that being said, Mr. Speaker, I thank the Minister for bringing this bill to this honourable House, and I thank my colleagues for their support.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I'll call on the Honourable Minister for her right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish also to go on record to thank the Parliamentary Secretary for her contribution and for expressing and conveying our gratitude to the legal draftspersons, the Law Reform Commission, and to the ministerial staff, and of course to our colleagues who supported the navigation thereof to where it is currently. Mr. Speaker, we believe that once the regulations are put in place at the cabinet level and into the implementation stage, that we can begin to see a real change into the bullying that goes on, as I said, not just at the schools, but at home, at churches, workplace, and even at the highest echelons within the land. We believe that it's everybody's business in order to neutralise and have a zero tolerance towards bullying, and we're in the Ministry, and indeed the PAC government is committed to no less than that, Mr. Speaker. I wish also to commend the conclusive passage of the second reading of this to all honourable members. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question is that a bill shortly entitled the Education Amendment Bill 2022 be given a second reading. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The Education Amendment Bill 2022 has been given a second reading. The House will now go into committee to consider the bills. Please be seated. The House is now in committee stage, and with the leave of the House, may I assume that as usual we should authorize the Honourable Attorney General to correct minor errors and such alike in the bills. We begin, the clerk would please state the bill and clauses.
Traffic Amendment Bill 2022. Clause 1, short title. Clause 2, amendment of Section 2 of the Traffic Act 2021 revision, interpretation. Clause 3, transitional provisions.
Is there any question on these clauses? If not, I will put the question. The question is that clauses 1 to 3 do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, the ayes have it. Clauses 1 to 3 is now part of the bill.
A bill for an act to amend the Traffic Act 2021 revision to change the definition of prescribed limit and for incidental and connected purposes.
Question is that the title do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against, the ayes have it. The title stands part of the bill. The question is that the bill be reported to the House. Yeah. I won't move fast.
The Mental Health Amendment Bill 2022, Clause 1, short title and commencement. Clause 2, amendment of Section 2 of the Mental Health Act 2022 revision, interpretation.
Question is that clauses 1 and 2 do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against, the ayes have it. Clauses 1 and 2 is now part of the bill.
Clause 3, amendment of Section 6, emergency detention order.
The Honourable Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, no written notice have been provided. I seek your leave to make a slight amendment pursuant to Standing Order 52.2 to Clause 3 of the bill. I've spoken to the Honourable Minister and she's aware of the proposal and as it relates to Clause 3 and the proposed Section 6.1 amendment. And the amendment, Mr. Speaker, is in respect of where the word directing appears. It reads prescribed form directing a constable. The proposed amendment is to delete the word directing and substitute therefore authorizing.
Sorry.
Clause 3. Fourth line.
Sorry, was amendment?
Take out the word directing.
It's a change of one word, right?
From
And
directed to authorizing.
I have given permission for the amendment, but can the committee accept that we take it as is, as the AG has?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
No.
Three, and I think that the clerk didn't get exactly where in clause 3. Where is the word change? Three A.
Directing a constable, and that's a change to what?
Authorizing. Authorizing or authorize? Authorizing? Authorizing. A constable.
Change directing to authorizing.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is the one. This is the one I use.
Yes, sir.
The amendment, as I said, have been given permission and has been duly moved. Anyone wishing to speak thereto? And if no member wishes to speak, the question is that the amendment stand part of the clause. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The amendment, the ayes have it. The amendment stands part of the clause. Question now is that the clause do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those against, the ayes have it. Clause 3, as amended, stands part of the bill.
Clause 4, repeal and substitution of Section 7, apprehension of a person suspected to be a danger. Clause 5, amendment of Section 9, treatment order.
So,
Take the question on 4 and 5.
question is that clauses 4 and 5 do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, the ayes have it. Clauses 4 and 5 is now part of the bill.
Clause 6, amendment of Section 12,
Clause, do we-
assisted outpatient treatment order.
Thank you.
Honorable AG.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, no written notice having been provided, I seek your leave pursuant to Standing Order 52-2 to make a committee stage amendment to Clause 6, line 4, by deleting the word directing and substituting therefore the word authorizing.
The permission has been granted, and therefore the amendment is now moved. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The question is that the amendments now stand part of the clause. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The amendment stands part of the clause. The question is that clause 6, as amended, stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against? The ayes have it, and clause 6, as amended, stands part of the bill.
Clause 7, repeal and substitution of Section 16, postal restrictions.
Question is that clause 7 do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Clause 6 stands part of the bill.
A bill for an act to amend the Mental Health Act 2022 revision to clarify the procedure relating to emergency detention orders, to provide for orders for protective custody, to provide for restrictions on access to electronic networks for patients, and for incidental and connected purposes.
Question is that the title do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The title is now part of the bill.
Mental Health Commission Amendment Bill 2022. Clause 1, short titling commencement. Clause 2, amendment of Section 7 of the Mental Health Commission Act 2013, functions of commission, quasi-judicial. Yeah, that's it, just 2 clauses.
Question is that clauses 1 and 2 do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Clauses 1 and 2 is now part of the bill.
A bill for an act to amend the Mental Health Commission Act 2013 as a consequence of the enactment of the Mental Health Amendment Act 2022. and for incidental and connected purposes.
Question is that the title do stand as part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The title is now part of the bill.
Financial Assistance Bill 2022. Clause 1, short titling commencement.
Question is that clause 1 do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Clause 1 is now part of the bill.
Clause 2, interpretation.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In accordance with the provisions of Standing Order 52.1 and 2, I ask for leave to give notice, and I've provided notice of the following committee stage amendments, and one is in relation to Clause 2.1 of the bill, as follows. By deleting the definition of the word guardian and substituting the following definition, guardian means a person who lives with a dependent and who has the charge of and who is responsible for the care and well-being of the dependent, and by deleting the definition of the words personal data.
Question is that the amendment to stand part of the clause. Has moved it. Question is that the amendment do stand part of the clause. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against? The amendment stands part of the clause. The question is that the amendment do stands part of the bill. Clause 2 as amended do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against, the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and clause 2 as amended stands part of the bill.
Clause 3, the Department of Financial Assistance. Clause 4, functions of the department. Clause 5, powers of the department. Clause 6, director and other officers of the department. Clause 7, duties and responsibilities of the director. Clause 8, minister may give written policy directions.
Yes. Question is that clauses 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 do stand part of the bill. If there is no debate, all those in favor, please say aye. Those against, the ayes have it. Clauses 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 stand part of the bill.
Clause 9, entity or financial institution to provide information to a director.
The Honourable Minister.
Yes, Mr. Chair. In line with the notice of committee stage amendments, there's also a committee stage amendment to Clause 9. I should say, as I should probably mention, for the purposes of this committee, as I mentioned in my contribution to the debate, these changes emanate from consultation with the Office of the Ombudsman to be ensured that the bill is in line with data protection rules. As it relates to Clause 9, the bill be amended in Clause 9 as follows. By deleting the words "with the consent of an applicant or a recipient" and substituting the words "where authorized in writing by or on behalf of an applicant, a recipient, or a member of the household of the applicant or recipient." And B, by inserting the words "a financial institution" by inserting after the words, the words, a financial institution, the words, in respect of such a person.
Question is that the amendment stands part of the clause. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. The amendment stands part of the clause. Question is, if no one wishes to speak, that clause 9 as amended stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Clause 9 is amended, stands part of the bill.
Clause 10, persons who may make an application. Clause 11, evaluation and determination of application. Clause 12, grant of application. Clause 13, refusal of application.
Question is that clauses 10, 11, and 12 do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. No. Sorry. Clauses 10, 11, 12, 13. Am I right? There is an amendment for 14. Yes. Clauses 10, 11, 12, and 13 do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Clauses 10, 11, 12, and 13 is now part of the bill.
Clause 14, conditions attached to the receipt of financial assistance.
The Honourable the Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In line with our notice, I move that the bill be amended in clause 14.4 as follows. A, by deleting the words notwithstanding subsection 3, where, and substituting the word where. B, in paragraph A, by deleting the word only. And C, by deleting paragraph B and substituting the following paragraph, small b, shall be entitled to receive details or information relating to the assessment, examination, or treatment of the recipient or the relevant member of the recipient's household, which may be reasonably required in the exercise of the director's duties and responsibilities and function under this act.
Question is that the amendment do stands part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Stand part of the clause, sorry. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The amendment stands part of the clause. Question is, if there is no debate, the question is clause 14 as amended stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Clause 14 as amended is now part of the bill.
Clause 15, suspension of financial assistance. Clause 16, revocation of financial assistance. Clause 17, variation of financial assistance. Clause 18, reconsideration of decision. Clause 19, appointment and constitution of the Financial Assistance Appeal Tribunal. Clause 20, appointment of secretary. Clause 21, tenure of Appeals Tribunal. Clause 22, vocation of office. Clause 22, vacation of office. Clause 23, disclosure of interest. Clause 24, functions of the Appeal Tribunal. Clause 25, powers of the Appeal Tribunal.
Question is that clauses 15 through to 25 do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Clauses 15 to 25 is now part of the bill.
Clause 26, confidentiality of information by officers.
The Honourable the Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move in line pursuant to our notice, that the bill be amended in Clause 26 as follows. In subclause 1 as follows, by deleting the word personal. In paragraph A, by deleting the word and at the end of the paragraph, by deleting paragraph B. And in paragraph C, by deleting the words from other sources and substituting the words through lawful means. In addition, Mr. Speaker, in subclause 2, be amended as follows, by deleting the word personal. Also in paragraph B, by inserting the word or at the end of the paragraph, and by deleting paragraph C and D and substituting the following paragraph. Having regard to the rights and freedoms or legitimate interests of a person, the disclosure is necessary in the public interest and is made by the director or person authorized in writing by the director to issue external communications on behalf of the department and limited to the information necessary to correct false information publicly issued by a person in relation to the manner in which that person's application is being or has been dealt with, or the conduct of the department or an officer of the department in the officer's official capacity. And in subclause 3, by deleting the word personal.
The amendment has been duly moved, and if no member wishes to speak, the question is that the amendment stand part of the clause. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. The amendment stands part of the clause. Question is now that the clause 26 as amended stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. Clause 26 as amended is now part of the bill.
Clause 27, duty of confidentiality by the appeal tribunal.
Honorable Minister.
Pursuant to our notice, Mr. Chair, the bill be amended in clause 27.1 by inserting after the word jurisdiction the words or where required by law.
The amendment has been duly moved. Does any member wish to speak? If not, the question is that the amendment stand part of the clause. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. The amendment stands part of the clause. Question is now, if no one wishes to speak, is that clause 27 as amended stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Clause 27 as amended is now part of the bill.
Clause 28, providing false or misleading information. Clause 29, recovery of money improperly paid or overpaid. Clause 30, financial assistance inalienable. Clause 31, government not liable to supplier of goods and services. Clause 32, death or recipient. Clause 33, non-transferable of financial assistance. 33.
Question is that clauses 29, 30, 31, 32, 33.
You missed 28. Clauses 28 to 33.
Let me do that numbering again. For belt and braces sake, clauses 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, and 33 do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Clauses 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, and 33 is now part of the bill.
Clause 34, regulations.
The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And pursuant to our notice, Finally, that the bill be amended in clause 34(1) as follows. In paragraph N, by deleting the full stop at the end of the paragraph and substituting the words and by inserting after paragraph N the following paragraph, lowercase o, for matters related to the disclosure of data or information under section 26(2)(c).
The amendment has been moved. If no one wishes to speak, the question is that the amendment stand part of the clause. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against, the ayes have it. The amendment stands part of the clause. Question now is that the clause do stand part, the amendment. The question is now that the clause number 34 as amended stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against, the ayes have it. Clause 34 as amended stands part of the bill.
Clause 35, repeal of Poor Persons Relief Act 1997 revision. Clause 36, savings and transitional provisions.
Question is that clauses 35 and 36 do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against, the ayes have it. Clauses 35 and 36 is now part of the bill.
A bill for an act to repeal the Poor Persons Relief Act 1997 revision, to provide for the continuance of the Needs Assessment Unit as the Department of Financial Assistance, to introduce a new procedure in respect of applications for and the issuance of financial assistance, to provide for a financial assistance appeal tribunal, and for incidental and connected purposes.
The question is that the title do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against, the ayes have it. The title is now part of the bill.
Accountants Amendment Bill 2022, Clause 1, short title and commencement.
Question is that Clause 1 do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye.
Clause 2, amendment of Section 2 of the Accountants Act 2022 revision, interpretation.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In accordance with the provisions of Standing Order 52(1) and 2, I've given notice of the following amendment to the Accountants Amendment Bill 2022, that the bill be amended in Clause 2 by inserting after the words "is amended" the words "in Section 2." Just a small edit.
The amendment has been duly moved. Does any member wish to speak thereto? The question then is that the amendment stand part of the clause. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, the ayes have it. The amendment is now part of the clause. The question is that clause 2, as amended, stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, the ayes have it. Clause 2, as amended, is now part of the bill.
Clause 3, amendment of Section 8, registration of members and renewal of membership. Clause 4, insertion of Section 8A, registration of retired members. Clause 5, amendment of Section 10, registration of students and renewal of membership. Clause 6, amendment of Section 11, licensing of Caymanians and permanent residents. Clause 7, amendment of Section 12, licensing of work permit holders. Clause 8, amendment of Section 13, practicing without a license to be an offense. Clause 9, amendment of Section 38, oversight procedures.
Question is that clauses 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against? The ayes have it, and clauses 3 to 9 is now part of the bill.
A bill for an act to amend the Accountants Act 2020 revision to update legislative references and to enhance the administration of the Act and for incidental and connected purposes.
Which part is that? Question is that the title. Which one? Comments. The question is that the title do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The title is now part of the bill.
Limited Liability Companies Amendment Bill 2022. Clause 1, short title. Clause 2, amendment of Section 5 of the Limited Liability Companies Act 2021 revision, formation. Clause 3, amendment of Section 61, register of members. Clause 4, amendment of Section 90A, request for additional information.
Question is that clauses 1 to 4 do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against? Clauses 1, 2, 3, and 4 stands part of the bill.
A bill for an act to amend the Limited Liability Companies Act 2021 revision to vary the information required in the registration statement of a limited liability company, to require a limited liability company to keep a record of the interests held by and the voting rights of each member of a limited liability company, to remove the penalty for failure to comply with a request by the competent authority for additional information and for incidental and connected purposes.
Question is that the title do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against? The ayes have it, and the title is now part of the bill.
Education Amendment Bill 2022. Clause 1, short title and commencement. Clause 2, amendment of Section 2 of the Education Act 2016, interpretation. Clause 3, insertion of Section 27A in the Education Act 2016, anti-bullying policy.
Question is that clauses 1, 2, and 3 do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Clauses 1, 2, and 3 is now part of the bill.
A bill for an act to amend the Education Act 2016 to require all schools to formulate an anti-bullying policy and for incidental and connected purposes.
The question is that the title do stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Question now is that the bills be reported to the House. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against? The ayes have it, and the bills will therefore be reported to the Honorable House. This ends the business in committee. Please be seated. The House has now resumed, continuing its business.
Report on bills. Traffic Amendment Bill 2022.
The Honorable, the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to report that a bill shortly entitled the Traffic Amendment Bill 2022 was considered by a committee of the whole House and passed without amendment.
The bill has been duly reported and is set down for the third reading.
Mental Health Amendment Bill 2022.
The Honorable, the Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support a bill titled Mental Health Amendment Bill 2022 that has passed the reports and has been passed without amendments.
The bill has been duly reported and is set down for the third reading.
Mental Health Commission Amendment Bill 2022.
The Honorable, the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the bill titled Mental Health Commission Amendment Bill 2022 has been duly reported with amendments.
The bill has been duly reported and is set down for third reading.
Thank you.
Financial Assistance Bill 2022.
The Honorable, the Minister of Financial Services, Commerce, Social Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to report that a bill shortly entitled the Financial Assistance Bill was considered by a committee of the whole House and passed with amendments.
The bill has been duly reported and is set down now for the third reading.
Accountants Amendment Bill 2022.
The Honorable, the Minister of Financial Services, Commerce.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to report that a bill shortly entitled the Accountants Amendment Bill 2022 was considered by the committee of the whole House and was passed with amendments.
The bill has been duly reported and is set down for the third reading.
Limited Liability Companies Amendment Bill 2022.
The Honorable, the Minister of Financial Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to report that a bill entitled the Limited Liability Companies Amendment Bill 2022 was considered by a committee of the whole House and was passed without amendments.
The bill has been duly reported and is set down for the third reading.
Education Amendment Bill 2022.
The Honorable, the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have to report that a bill shortly entitled the Education Amendment Bill 2022 was considered by the Committee of the whole House and passed without amendment.
The bill has been duly reported and is now set down for the third reading.
Third readings.
Should I read the title? I think we need the suspension of the standing orders. Honorable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to move the suspension of Standing Order 47 to allow bills to be given a third reading on the same day. Thank you.
Question is that Standing Order 47 be suspended in order to have all the readings of the bills. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, the ayes have it. The standing order is now suspended.
Third readings, Traffic Amendment Bill 2022.
The Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the bill shortly entitled the Traffic Amendment Bill 2022 be given a third reading and passed.
The question is that the bill shortly entitled the Traffic Amendment Bill 2022 be given a third reading and passed. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, the ayes have it. Traffic Amendment Bill 2022 has been read a third time and is now passed.
Mental Health Amendment Bill 2022.
The Honorable the Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I beg that the bill titled Mental Health Amendment Bill 2022 be given a third reading and passed.
The question is that the bill shortly entitled the Mental Health Amendment Bill 2022 be given a third reading and passed. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, the ayes have it. The Mental Health Amendment Bill 2022 has been read a third time and is now passed.
Mental Health Commission Amendment Bill 2022.
The Honorable the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg that the bill titled Mental Health Commission Amendment Bill 2022 be given a third reading and passed.
The question is that the bill shortly entitled the Mental Health Commission Amendment Bill 2022 be given a third reading and passed. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, the ayes have it. The Mental Health Commission Amendment Bill 2022 has been read a third time and is passed.
Financial Assistance Bill 2022.
The Honorable the Minister of Financial Services, Commerce and Social Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that a bill shortly entitled the Financial Assistance Bill 2022 be given a third reading and passed.
Question is that a bill shortly entitled the Financial Assistance Bill 2022 be given a third reading and passed. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, the ayes have it. The Financial Assistance Bill 2022 has been read a third time and is now passed.
Accountants Amendment Bill 2022.
The Honorable the Minister of Financial Services and Commerce.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that a bill shortly entitled the Accountants Amendment Bill 2022 be given a third reading and passed.
The question is that a bill shortly entitled the Accountants Amendment Bill 2022 be given a third reading and passed. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, the ayes have it. The Accountants Amendment Bill 2022 has been read a third time and is now passed.
Limited Liability Companies Amendment Bill 2022.
The Honorable Minister of Financial Services and Commerce.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that a bill shortly entitled the Limited Liability Companies Amendment Bill 2022 be given a third reading and passed.
The question is that a bill shortly entitled the Limited Liability Companies Amendment Bill 2022 be given a third reading and passed. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The Limited Liability Companies Amendment Bill 2022 has been read a third time and is now passed.
Education Amendment Bill 2022.
The Honorable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that a bill shortly entitled the Education Amendment Bill 2022 be given a third reading and passed.
The question is that a bill shortly entitled the Education Amendment Bill 2022 be given a third reading and passed. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The Education Amendment Bill 2022 has been read a third time and is now passed.
Motions. Comment motion number 1 of 2022-23. Amendment to the Development Plan 1997. Propose rezoning West Bay Beach North Block 11B Parcel 55. West Bay Beach North Block 11B Parcel 58. West Bay Beach North Block 11B Parcel 59. To be moved by the Honourable Minister of Planning. West Bay Beach North Block 11B Parcel 79. To be moved by the Honourable Minister of Planning, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure.
The Honourable the Minister of Planning.
Mr. Speaker, Government Motion 1, 2022-23, Amendment to the Development Plan 1997, proposed rezoning of West Bay Beach North, Block 11, Parcel 55, West Bay Beach North, Block 11B, Parcel 58, West Bay Beach North, Block 11B, Parcel 79. Okay. Whereas on the 20th of October 2020, a reference to the CPA 1820 item 3.1, the Central Planning Authority CPA originally considered the request to amend the development plan from neighborhood commercial to hotel tourism over block 11B, parcel 55, and block 11B 58, and 11B parcel 79. It will resolve to forward this proposal for 60 days of public notification and consultation period pursuing the Section 11.2 of the Development Planning Act 2017 revision. And whereas the proposed amendments were duly advertised in the Cayman Times newspaper on the 11th, the 13th, the 18th, the 20th of November 2020, in accordance with Section 11.2 of the Development Plan Law 2017 revision, with the public consultation closing on January the 19th of 2021. Persons were invited to view the application at the Department of Planning for comments. During the public consultation period, no letters or objections were received on the proposed amendments. And whereas on the 3rd of February 2021, the CPA, the Central Planning Authority, again considered the proposal and in light received no objections, and it was resolved to forward the rezone application to the Ministry of Planning, Agriculture and Housing Infrastructure for onward transmission to the House of Parliament, subject to Cabinet approval. And whereas on 23rd of August of 22, Cabinet considered the rezoning application and approved that the matter be referred to Parliament for considerations. Speaker, be it now, therefore, resolved that in accordance with the section 10(2)B of the Development and Planning Law 2007 revision, as amended, the Central Planning Authority hereby recommends the submission of this to the Parliament and the following proposals for the alteration of the Development Plan 1997 summary and maps which are attached hereto.
Question is, be it now therefore resolved that in accordance in section 10(2)B of the Development and Planning Law 2017 revision as amended, the Central Planning Authority hereby recommends and submits to the Parliament the following proposal for alteration to the Development Plan 1997, a summary and maps of which are attached hereto. Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Section 10(2) of the Development Plan Act 2021 revision, I wish to lay on the table of this Honourable House the proposal changes to the zoning of the land belonging to registration section West Bay Beach North, namely Block 11B, parcels 55, 58, and 79. Mr. Speaker, members will find in the information before them related to the rezone submission of the following: a written summary of the rezone application, a map illustration of the location of the proposed rezone submission, and existing zoning over the land. The lands, as mentioned in the motion, are located just south of the public beach, adjacent to the Harbour Heights condominium development. The proposal, Mr. Speaker, is simply to alter the zoning of these lands to allow the enhancement of our tourist product in that area. Mr. Speaker, the motion read earlier was very detailed and contained many of the pertaining points of the application. In my brief presentation here today, I merely intend to summarize and clarify it rather than reiterate the details and clearly present in the motion. Mr. Speaker, the land in questions are part of an existing development and presently zoned neighborhood commercial in accordance with Development Planning Act. The Central Planning Authority, the CPA, was presented with the application by the owner of the property of Trafalgar Investment in anticipation of a new hotel development on the subject parcels. In the department analyzed, it was noted that the subject property is situated at the north end of a long strip of land on the east side of the West Bay Road, which is zoned neighborhood commercial. However, Mr. Speaker, the land opposite the subject property on the west of the coastal side of the West Bay Road is zoned hotel tourism. In addition, to the north of the property lies the public beach and a series of parcels which were rezoned from neighborhood commercial to hotel tourism by the Honourable House in July of 2020. Mr. Speaker, the CPA advertised this proposal publicly in newspapers on the 4th, the 6th, the 9th, and the 10th of September in 2019, with no objections were received. The CPA considered the proposal to be in accordance with the sound planning principles which reflect the development history and potential of these lands. It can be noted, Mr. Speaker, that the key difference between the current zoning and the proposed zoning is in the building heights. The approved building heights will be changed from the 3 stories to the 10 stories, however, given that the surrounding area to the northwest is also hotel tourism. Development of that site should fit in with the surrounding. On February the 3rd, 2021, the CPA resolved and forwarded the rezone application to the Ministry of Planning Infrastructure, Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure, and now the Ministry of Planning, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure, and subject to Cabinet approval for onward transmission to the House of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to say that on the 23rd of August of 22, Cabinet considered the rezoning proposal and approved that matter advanced in the House of Parliament for consideration. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I ask that the support of this Honourable House for the approval of zoning West Bay Beach North, Block 11B, Parcel 55, from neighborhood commercial to hotel tourism. West Bay Beach North, Block 11B, Parcel 58, from neighborhood commercial to hotel tourism. And West Bay Beach North, Block 11B, Parcel 79, from neighborhood commercial to hotel tourism. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? If not, does the minister want to reply?
Mr. Speaker, I just want to thank my colleagues for their full support, sir.
Question is that government motion number 1, 2022, it's resolved as follows. I'll find it now. Nazina, you have that? You have the motion? The motion. Question is, be it now therefore resolved that in accordance in Section 10(2)(b) of the Development and Planning Law 2017 revision as amended, the Central Planning Authority hereby recommends and submits to the Parliament the following proposal for alteration to the Development Plan 1997, a summary and maps of which are attached hereto. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against? The motion has passed. The four honourable members, I bring the gavel down on what should be my last meeting of the House as the Speaker. I have a message. But before I get to that message, I've been asked by Captain Owen Panton, who's been with us most of the time and is still here tonight with us, the former member of the vestry, to say thanks for the courtesies extended to him these last couple of days. And he also asked me to say something about the assistance to Cuba, our neighbors who that would be Isle of Pines, that has had so much damage, and who gave the Cayman Islands assistance in the area of employment and health, at times of health. So let us do what God expects of us. Please help these dear people who are suffering from being hit by the hurricane. That was his message, and certainly people have been contacting me as they have done before, and we certainly will look at it. Honourable colleagues, as I said, this should be my last meeting of the House as the Speaker presiding. And in this coming departure from the Speaker's office is what I consider to be a bittersweet moment. Bitter in the sense of the circumstances on which I opted to resign, considering the interferences and undue influences being brought to bear publicly on the matter of the accusations against me. However, it is sweet primarily because I will be leaving this honorable office in the very capable hands, I hope, of my successor, who is the Deputy Speaker, who is a committed and dedicated, young, but very mature woman from West Bay, who would be the 4th female Speaker of this institution. It is also a sweet moment for the mere fact that I will be able to now fully participate in matters concerning the debates in this House. I will be able to be more active in matters concerning my constituents and meaningfully participate in debates of policy that affects people that government will bring to this honorable House. I am not seeking any office as a parliamentary secretary, nor do I ever want to be back in cabinet under the situation that reigns in this country. RAINS DOW down on us. So I just want to make that clear. Younger people are there whom I support, and I believe the country is continuing to be in good hands. I will offer my support where I can to the elected government, who is my colleagues, and certainly to any civil service matter that I can help. I wish to express my deep and sincere gratitude to all those who have served the House during my time as Speaker. I'm conscious that the House functions as well as it does only because of the dedicated service given by those who serve in the various departments of the House. To that end, I will continue to promote and advocate that our Parliament progress and evolve on its new strategic direction. The honourable members is fully aware and mindful that we do have some archaic and inefficient ways of doing things that I believe should not any longer be the norm. I believe we are in good hands of the new Speaker once the House chooses that. As we transition, the status quo can no longer be the same, and we are still in that mode, transitionary mode, as far as our law is concerned that governs the House. And I am confident that my successor will continue on the path to ensure the Parliament's affairs are managed efficiently and represents a first-class or world-class House of Parliament. To all the staff and to those who were particularly helpful and efficient, I express profound appreciation. During my period of office, there have been particular staff to the Speaker, particularly the clerk, the chief officer now, the sergeant-at-arms, and the chief parliamentary advisor. Each has brought faithful dedication to the House, to the service of the House, and I am grateful to them. To all who have been a colleague, a professional friend, and a personal friend, your loyalty and support have enriched my speakership. I am also particularly in debt to all those who have served as deputy speakers during my period of office. I want to say a special thanks to Pat Hewlett, who is my personal assistant, and Ava Tomlinson, who works sometimes as my driver, sometimes as an officer in my West Bay District office. They are people that are loyal, hardworking, and honest. Pat, who was herself a long-time civil servant, was retired, and Ava, who had 30 years in banking experience, supervisory positions at the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce. I want also to express gratitude to those honourable members who have served on the Parliament Management Council, which I chaired by virtue of being the Speaker and other committees for I think without their service, our committee system would not survive. I'm cognizant of the fact that there is much more work to be done on the council, and the Act which governs this parliament was a starting point, but now, having been in operation, needs to be amended. I express gratitude to those members of the media and the press gallery for the way in which some of them conducted themselves and honor our traditions and conform to our rules. For I strongly believe that a free and responsible press is as important as freedom of speech for members of the House. To those who care not to pay us any credence, I wish them all the best. And may God, wherever they go, send them with plenty of breeze on their backs. I want to pay a special tribute to the civil service, because without them, we would be ineffective, inoperable, and essentially futile, because it is them who implemented the policies, or who implement the policies that government institutes. They are the backbone for our existence in public life. I want to also thank the Deputy Governor for assisting me during my speakership and adding his expertise and his acumen and know-how as a civil servant and one who was in charge of the civil service, for doing all that he did to help create the new post of Speaker under the law. And also I do want to thank the Attorney General for his various assistance at times. But special mention must also go to Chief Officer Gloria McField, who took the time to help and resolve so many various issues, and who also served here as a temporary member at times. The House will understand that I want to pay special tribute to the personal staff, where I have been treated in a most respectful and wonderful manner. They have all been as my family. The devotion of the staff of my constituencies, the secretary and drivers, as I have said, make me a fortunate person in their assistance. Persons contribute to who we are, but let no one or any outsider bring this parliament into disrepute, because rest assured, many commentators are intellectually bankrupt and have no useful ideas. Having said that, we as parliamentarians need to keep abreast and continue to respect our authority and responsibility at all times. We are mindful that few may say the integrity of the politician is online, few. But we have tremendous support out there who knows different, who understands different, and who knew us, some of us, from childhood. I want to express to the House the humble pride that I shall always have in the knowledge that for over 5 years I have been trusted by the House with the noble and distinguished office of Speaker. I have served in many posts, from being its first Premier, with the Minister of Education, present Minister of Education, I was my deputy, and served my country to the best of my ability, honestly, and no matter what they said and what they tried to do, and still trying to do, they could not succeed. My work has benefited the Cayman Islands through my guidance at times. One of the fulfilling and great joys of my life has been to forge friendships in all parties around our house. Some lasting friendships, others go by as their convenience allows them to. Before and during my tenure in the speakership role has also led to friendships with speakers throughout various jurisdictions in our Commonwealth and the global community, but particularly in the Commons with the Honorable Sir Lindsay Hoyle, and who has given me tremendous advice over the years that I have known him, and that he has been leading the House as Speaker and Deputy Speaker. And of course, those colleagues in the region, in our Caribbean region, whom I have tremendous rapport with. Throughout my nearly 40 years, 10 terms of membership of the House, I have always felt deep affection and respect for its practices, conventions, and traditions. Traditions which have survived the test of time should not lightly be discarded, even though modernizing some aspects is important to reflect the time we live in, and we must do that, and I see that happening. And this government, being with tremendously younger people, first-termers, have a tremendous opportunity to continue to modernize and our practices. Some of it is outmoded. We just can't follow everything that is written down in the Commonwealth. Our culture is different. Our heritage is most important to us, and those things that we hold dear to ourselves and to our parents and to our ancestors. There is a meaning and strength behind the traditions that we observe, and I'm fervent that the House safeguard these fundamental principles. This autonomous parliament impacts and is representative of our national life and is Cayman's fundamental bastion for democracy, and let no one else tell you anything, because our Constitution gives members of Parliament that authority, whether some like us or not. Whether some of our own supporters might say we're not doing the right thing, as I heard the Premier say today about the bill he was moving. Fact is, we have to do what our conscience leads us to do. Our democracy will be safeguarded if we are honest with ourselves. To thine own self be true. It isn't within these hallowed chambers that the liberties of people must be protected and respected. We are, young as we are as a parliament and representative government, we still a revered parliamentary democracy where many countries are jealous about what we call and what we live and move and how we're being in called the Cayman Islands. And I trust that the House will ever protect the values that brought greatness to our history and truly recognize the separation of powers as we know them to be. We are conscious of the undeniable fact that the nature of politics and our Westminster model is adversarial nature. But I'm hoping civility and good sense will always prevail. And I say that, but I honestly say that I'm 67 now. When I was 29 in that first seat over there, oh, it was war nearly every day because we didn't have the patience with one another, and I was young and hoping to get things done overnight, and it just do not happen that way. But at my age, and some of you who are not far away, civility and good sense, I know, will always prevail. Those of us who pray often, we have good prayer warriors here, and people like the Minister of Education, the member from Cayman East. Prayer is a great, great thing that God, we can get to him, and he will help us through that. I will close by urging all members to give your constituents, serve them well, because apart from administrative, organizational, and structural issues concerning governance, we should all aim to improve the quality of life, as has been said often from your onset here. And I know that's what your policies are trying to do. The quality of life of our citizens and residents alike, and ensure that they can have and enjoy a meaningful and productive life. So I implore all members to continue to attend the needs of the people at all times and never lose sight of that if you want to serve 40 years in this House. The people should be the reason why we all took this enormous responsibility. So we shall serve the common man well as we are obligated to them. Always be conversant to what the late Queen undersigned, your humble servant. So should we be to our people. I thought about whether I should get onto this in closing, but I do on my resignation as the Speaker. I owe it publicly to say that because our standing orders is silent on the exact timing of our resignation, and because the Constitution does not say that it is effective immediately. Constitution doesn't say that. I went to precedents of the House of Commons in the United Kingdom because our standing orders is silent on the exact timing. And it's the presiding officer at any time and in any circumstances prerogative to do so or not. I went and offered myself to resign. Yes, I was asked at the time. I said in my letter when we agreed. I have stuck to that. I have no intention to try to do otherwise. That's why I'm reading, if you want to call my swan song at this time, because I want people to understand that we are trying to keep the peace in this country and not to go to every outlet that they can get regionally to blackguard our country. On the matter of the motion, our Deputy Speaker had instructions to act. I would have been conflicted for me to preside over that decision to accept the motion of no confidence in the Speaker. It is legally written that no person can be a judge in his own cause. This rule against bias is strict in that it is not necessary that there is actual bias. It is breached even when there is only appearances of bias. Hence, the phrase, justice must not only be done, but manifestly be seen to be done. So I had to recuse myself from making the decision on that motion. And the Deputy Speaker rightly had to take over that process. The Deputy Speaker was absolutely duty-bound to act in the matter as she was instructed to handle the process. As the presiding officer, I took that decision, and a decision that I had authority to do, and rightly so. No one should accuse the Deputy Speaker of anything less than doing her duty. There's a lot more to be said, and I suspect, even with the patience that I want and I'm trying to exhibit, that more will be said sometime in the future. I do wish that Almighty God continue to bless this honorable House and our country, that we may always cherish the culture and the heritage of freedom handed to us by our forefathers. Thank you, colleagues, for the privilege of serving you as Speaker, but I give a commitment and undertaking to be an avid advocate for my constituency of West Bay West, and indeed to work with my other West Bay colleagues for or to assist them in any way I can, and to the people of this country from the backbench, to act in the interests of the peoples throughout these islands, Caymanians and those who choose to work and live among us. Honorable members, I thank you for your friendship. I thank you for the work you are doing, and I hope that I can continue to be a part of them. To those who are trying otherwise to bring me down, I will pray for them. I know what the Bible says. And where I am weak, God is strong, and has held me up, and he will continue to do that. I am thankful to the Premier and others who have exhibited, the Deputy and the Premier and others, other ministers and members here who have exhibited their appreciation and who does not want to see my family hurt further than we have been throughout this nasty ordeal. It probably will get worse before it gets better. But I like Prince Buster. Still a hard man to date. I'm here to the end, and I'll call on the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I want to start just quickly by joining with you and acknowledging the attendance of Captain Farrington for the time that he has spent with us, the dedication that reflects. He certainly seems to have more commitment and energy than the members across the aisle who have absented themselves, the opposition in absentia, for the past 2 days. So I certainly want to thank him for being here. It has been a very distinct pleasure having him here with us and joining in. Phenomenal conversations with the gentleman in the dining room, and he never misses an opportunity to share a perspective. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my colleagues who have done, I think, a phenomenal job of presenting the work that we have been doing today. Certainly, the bills that we have dealt with today, I think, reflect, while some of them have not been lengthy, they have been very significant and very much impactful upon the lives of our people in a positive way. Mr. Speaker, the Traffic Amendment Bill, Mental Health Amendment Bill, Mental Health Commission Amendment Bill, the Financial Assistance Bill, Accountants Amendment Bill, Limited Liability Companies Amendment Bill, the Education Amendment Bill. I would summarize those, Mr. Speaker, as saving lives, helping people who have impaired ability to decide for themselves, restoring dignity for those who need assistance, restoring or reinforcing service excellence, and protecting our young people from bullies. Mr. Speaker, excellent work, and I congratulate all of my colleagues, those who have moved the bills, those who have contributed so eloquently as well. Mr. Speaker, Friday was, as I said earlier, an interesting day, and I certainly want to thank all members who contributed to that day, the motions, the only motion that was dealt with, which reflected a motion of confidence in the government. Mr. Speaker, this government, this PAC government, can be proud, can be sure that we are united in delivering the best for our people and trying to advance our country and make a difference for all of our people, improve the quality of their lives, and leave a lasting legacy, Mr. Speaker, which will ensure that our children and their children have a Cayman that they can be proud of and that we can look back on and can be proud of as well in terms of our work, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will finish by acknowledging your comments, and I can hardly add anything to the quality of the the comments you have made and the acknowledgement that you have acted in the best interest of the country, and I don't think anybody can question your motive in that respect. We appreciate that, and we wish you and your family the best, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with that, I move that this Honourable House be adjourned, sine die.
New gavel that I had made in Honduras out of the very, very hardest wood that the country has. And it's now donated to the House. The question is that this Honourable House do stand adjourned, sine die. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, the ayes have it. This Honourable Parliament stands now adjourned.